Hello and welcome to part 2 of the tutorial. Um, I haven't touched a thing since part 1, and I just realized why it's all jaggy. It's because um, the software is recording this at 30 frames per second, and my monitor normally displays things at 144, so meh, it's working as it's supposed to. And processing is rendering at 60, so obviously there's weird jitter jaggies all over the place. Anyways, let's move on to the next part. Let's get an image into this. First, let's decrease the font size again. Hopefully, this will still be readable. I sure hope it's still readable in a video. I probably shouldn't go any smaller. So, the first thing we will want is some images. We need to put them in a place processing can find them easily. It can grab stuff from all over your computer, but let's just if you hit Sketch, go to Sketch folder, it'll pop open it'll show you exactly where you saved it. So, I have nicely prepared some images for us. Let's cut this out. As you probably saw when I popped open GIMP in the other video. So, I got two pictures. I got Dave all on his own, and a bunch of Homestuck characters set onto a fixed grid. And I'll get to why later. Alright. So, the first thing we will need is we will need a p image object. Let's call it Dave. P-image is like a variable that stores an image. An int, there's many types of variables. I probably should have gone over this already, but I didn't. Ints are solid numbers, so 1, 2, 3. There's also floats, which are decimal numbers, so that would be a float. If you want 1.5, you need to do a float. String is text, so that is a string. Boolean is either true or false, which is useful in certain cases. And there's a few other obscure ones. You'll probably hear double, which is the same thing as a float. There's some internal differences, but you won't need to deal with them at this level. Anyways, so p-image is what we use for storing images. We'll call it Dave. Now, what we need to do is we need to make it equal something. So Dave equals, and then load image, and then it's going to be Homestuck friends, and then dave.png. So let's copy this. Homestuck friends slash dave.png. It's a good idea to use the forward slashes instead of the back ones. Hopefully that works. Now, something odd in processing is that you can't actually do this here, otherwise it won't run properly. It'll throw a weird error. I think that's a different error though. It might be because I have a space in the name. Anyways, just to be certain, what I found out I have to do is you have to do it in the setup, and you have to have the setup modify the yeah, now it's not complaining. You have to have the setup modify the image, but the image variable can't be in setup because then draw won't see it. You could do this in draw, but then would run every single frame, and that would be slow. You probably wouldn't notice because there's only one picture, but it adds up when you get to do fancy things. Alright, so let's draw it. So, let's type image, and image takes the same arguments as rectangle, but it takes one before it, which is the image variable. So we call that Dave. Let's put it at x, y, and let's skip defining a size for now. It'll be horribly oversized, as you can clearly see. Yeah, so let's size that down to 100, 100. I hope that doesn't overscale. Yeah, it stretches it. 1 second while I quickly look up how big it is. So 214 by 253. 253 or 252. 3.9 times 214. All right. So let's make his width 84. That's about right. And then we can double slash will comment out the rectangle line. So now we'll have all on his own bouncing Dave. While we're at it, we can set these also to 84 and leave that one out as 100. Now, this is all nice and stuff, but it's only one bouncing Dave. And if we wanted to add more bouncing Daves, we would need to copy paste a whole ton of code, and we don't want to do that. So we're gonna make a class. This is where things might get a little tricky. It falls under the topic of object-oriented programming, but if you want to do anything interesting, it's probably a good idea to start using it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new class. In processing, you can do that by clicking this little arrow and then clicking New Tab. We have to name the tab first, so let's just name it Entity. That's a nice generic name. So you type class entity, and then you do these things. Now, class files have a couple interesting pieces to them. They work pretty much like the main processing file. So you got this area, which you can define variables in. Then you have they call it the constructor. Can't remember if it starts with void or not. I'll start it without. It's just a method that's the same name as the class. And this is ran once when you first create the new entity. And then you can add any other method you want. We'll be adding void display. We can't use the word draw because processing already uses that for the draw method, but display works as well. So how do we want to do this? We want, first of all, let's delete our yeah, we're going to be commenting out. Let's comment out everything that will cause it to crash. Let's comment out these. Let's comment out this line. That. And we can leave these. So all the Dave stuff. Now let's make a new entity. We're going to call it Dave. And now we're going to give it, well, I'm going to just, actually we don't need those. Let's just run this and see if it crashes. Yeah, that crashes. Entity Dave. And then here we do Dave equals new entity. These don't need to be commented out. Alright, our rounding square is gone, but that's okay. So this is a little confusing, but the entity Dave, that creates a new entity that is Dave, but it doesn't really exist yet. It's there, but it's just a blank slate. And then when you run Dave equals new entity, that actually makes it. Actually, it will run all the code in here. Now what we can do is we can pass it an XY position and stuff. So let's put int tx, int ty in there, and let's give it variables int x, int y, int vx, and these variables will only be seen, anything inside here is only seen by this one entity. Each entity has its own copy of x, y, vx, vy. Alright. Hopefully I haven't already lost you. So in here we put x equals, alternatively, the tx variable we created, or we could call it temporary, but that's too many letters. That only exists within the entity creation. And seeing as we want it to exist outside of it, we say x, and then x equals tx. Back here, we have to make sure this matches this. So we're going to pass it two integers. So let's make 150 and 160. And then y equals ty. Alright, and then for display, oh wait, first we need to put our image code back in. We're going to put it into the class this time. The image, I'll just call it image. Image equals load image. Oh, I had that on the clipboard. That's good. And then display image. Oh wait, maybe we shouldn't. Let's just call it I. That's a safe variable that totally won't be used for loops later. I, x, y, O is 84. Alright. Now this code won't run until we do the display method. So we're not going to be using this for a while. So down here we put Dave.display. And it needs the curly brackets so it matches this. And we hit run, and we should have Dave right there at 150, 160. This might seem like a lot of extra work to do exactly the same thing, but it'll be totally worth it in a little bit, trust me. So let's put that code we just cut out back in. I usually like having to draw part at the very bottom. And now Dave should be back to bouncing. But he's not. Why is he not bouncing? Or moving, for that matter. We don't need these. Let's get rid of those extra lines. David on display. X plus equals Vx. Huh. That's odd. Maybe... I can't remember if I need to actually put these up here. That will probably crash it. No? It still likes it, but it won't move. This is a puzzler. That's for sure. Let's see. We have no extra code in here. Setup runs once. David display runs every frame. Image. The X position, the Y position. Oh! Oh, I'm so stupid. Okay. Yeah, this happens a lot when you're programming. I never set the Vx and Vy to anything, so they're defaulting to 0. So, Vy equals 3. Hit go, and now Dave should be back to bouncing. There we go. Bounce bonus points if you figured that out before I did. To make things a little more interesting, let's make these random. So random, you give it 2 numbers. Let's give it -4 and 4. And it will pick between any number between these two. Also, while we're at it, let's make these floats, because things are way more interesting if you can have decimal velocities. Alright, that's boring. There we go. Now he's actually moving at an angle. And bounce. So, we have one Dave on the screen. And now he's using a class. In the next video, we're going to make a lot more Daves. And it's going to be awesome.